It's Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Switzerland, and it's Space Café Web Talk time. Our Space Café Web Talk, 33 minutes with Antonino Salmeri, will begin soon. Thank you for joining us for our talk today about my journey from Sicily to the moon through space law. As always, we appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback. Any responses or any response from you is very valuable for us and helps us to improve. I'm Torsten Kriening, based on in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcasts. Our latest episode is another masterpiece by our great host Markus Moslechner, and he talked in this episode with Val Munsami, the CEO of SANSA, the South African Space Agency, about space innovation from Africa. So check it out. It's really worth your time. And we also keep our fan shop open online for you to support us actively and become a space watcher. The edition 1 has cool items for you, your friends, and the ones you love. Your support is needed to keep our work alive, and we do that for you. If you've missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our webpage in the events section and on YouTube. So, many of you know our today's guest also. He is super active, super passionate, super inspiring. A very warm welcome to my show today, Antonino Salmeri.
So thank you very much, Torsten.
Let me, and you see I put the bar already very high. So let me tell our audience a bit about you. So Antonino is an Italian space lawyer specialized in lunar governance and space resources activities. Since 2019, Antonino works as doctoral researcher in space law at the University of Luxembourg, where he is pursuing his PhD on a regulatory and enforcement aspect of space mining under the supervision of the wonderful Professor Mahulena Hofmann, and with the support of the Luxembourgish National Research Fund. He is also a qualified attorney registered at the Italian bar and holds 3 law degrees and 1 degree in law from Catania University, another one from the European Union, or governance of the European Union from the Lucis University, and another one in air and space law from the University of Leiden, all obtained with the distinction of cum laude, and that's super impressive, so chapeau for that. But he's not stopping with his activities, and so he's very active and holds positions at the SGAC, where he runs the Eagle team, where we will talk about a bit later. He is member of the Global Expert Group of Sustainable Lunar Activities. He is an SSP on ISU, International Space University, SSP 19 graduate. He is member of the Space Habitat Committee at the IAF, the International Astronautical Federation. He's member of the IASL, the International Institute of Space Law, and a member of the Moon Village Association. I forgot the Space Course Foundation. However, he holds in all these community active positions, shares, or many groups, and it's super impressive. However, not the topic for today. So with that studied, we have heard about the positions very briefly, but let me use the Susan Ball question. What is your dream? And before you answer, I think we get a short clip.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've never been given the chance before, but here's hoping it'll change.
Okay, I don't want to talk about that, but what is your dream?
Thank you, Torsten. And before I answer the question, let me thank you for inviting me here. It's really, for me, a great honor being featured in 33 Minutes with and contribute to SpaceWatch.Global. So Thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge admirer of your work and what you and Marcus do. And so I am really the space watcher, if you wish, and I'm really happy to be here. And to answer your question, what is my dream? Well, the title says it, the dream is the moon. And it may sound a little bit strange for a lawyer, right? But this is one thing that I've always been attached to. Since I was a little kid, and this may sound a little bit cheesy, but I'll say it anyways, I always felt a connection with the moon. You know, I got a telescope when I was about 7 from my father, and I started looking at the sky as obviously not a professional astronomer, but I learned my way into that. And for a while, I even considered studying astrophysics because I really wanted to do something related to space, to the moon, in terms of hard science first. And then I realized that hard science was something fascinating, but not something that really suited my professional and personal qualities. So I put it on the side for a while, but the connection with the moon stayed. And now I'm lucky enough that after a very long journey and a very long way, and we'll talk about that, I came back to it. And now I am able to at least think how I can fulfill my dream, which is to be very direct, to land on the moon. I want to be there, and I want to be there not just as a tourist, you know, visiting. What I really dream for me is to be responsible for the moon, is to hold, you know, responsibility for what humanity can do for that. And I mean it as a real responsibility. I think the moon is one of the most precious things that we have. And I want to help humanity continue benefiting from it in a different way than we used to do before, because of course, humanity expanding in the star is a big thing. And maybe it will not even happen completely in my lifetime. But for me, the idea of being connected and responsible for the moon and hopefully having the possibility of going there, maybe the first lawyer even able to go to the moon, that is the dream.
Cool. Oh, I think that's a reasonable one. Yeah. Sounds cool. I mean, with Elon and Jeff and whoever is putting up our people there, maybe just on a stopover to Mars. But yeah. But as you're specialized on space resources, I see you then also with a shuttle in your hand. So with a spacesuit and the shuttle, jumping on the moon. But tell us a bit like your story. I mean, we are titled My Journey from Sicily to the Moon through the Space Law. So what is not obvious, obviously? I mean, if you want to be an astronaut, then you have to study astrophysics, whatever.
Engineering, yeah.
What is the story?
Well, you know, the story is a little bit of a special one. Of course, I mean, I cannot be an astronaut because I'm not in the hard science, but I think we are evolving enough for people like me, people with a social and humanity background, to be able to go to space and to contribute. Because as we diversify, I think we have much to offer besides, you know, the technical capability that skilled and trained astronaut can provide. My story starts here in Sicily, you know, which is a wonderful region in Italy where I am at the moment, very hot, very nice. And it's full of history, right? It's something that I always really relate to. It's the connection with the past that allows me to also think and focus a little bit more on the future, moving from, let's say, solid grounds, right? I started studying law because I really was in two minds between law and hard science. But then I felt that I was more interested in how humans work and are regulated rather than the universe it is, right? And I still stand to that. I think the way we organize each other is really a fascinating subject. And I feel I'm up for understanding it and hopefully contributing to that. So I started law, but of course I have to tell you in Sicily, there is no idea of what space law is, not even in Italy. I mean, only very few universities do that. So when I started law, I continued to look at the sky, I continued to look at the moon, but as a passion. I never thought about it as a professional development. And then when I finished my first degree in law, I wanted to be a professor. And my field of study at the time was general theory of law and constitutional law. But I soon realized that unfortunately the situation of the academia in Italy is a little bit tricky. So my supervisors advised me to go abroad or to change career. And because I didn't want to change career, I still wanted to be a professor. I said, okay, I'm going to go abroad and figure it out, right? I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I just decided to take a break and think about it and follow my instinct. And that led me to Oxford. I learned English in Oxford, and I came back and I decided, okay, if I cannot do constitutional law, I'll do European constitutional law. So I studied European law and governance in Rome. and in English, and that was one of the best years of my life. I met with wonderful people, but I very soon realized that European law was not really my thing. It was very overflowed. It was very boring, if I have to be honest, with due respect to my colleagues that do European law. And that was already at the beginning of my studies, so I felt a little bit lost. And that was Elon Musk presented his plans to go to Mars and have this colony on Mars and have 1 million people living there and becoming multiplanetary. And I was fascinated. I mean, in time, I changed a little bit my opinion about Elon and the things that he does. But at the time, we can talk about it, but at the time, it really, turned something inside me. And I said, I want to help this guy. I think his dream is amazing. But of course, it's too late for me to become a scientist or an astrophysic. So there must be something that a lawyer can do to help humanity go to Mars. And so I Googled space law. I found about the Outer Space Treaty. It was as simple as that. I found the Outer Space Treaty, and then I said, okay, this is the thing. It immediately clicked in me. I really want to do that because it combines my experience with constitutional law, designing new legal system. It was really fascinating. My passion, my long-standing passion for space. And so I found the University of Leiden. I decided that I wanted to study there. I found Professor Tanya Massanswan, who was one of my mentor and still is one of the best person that I know in space law. And so I studied there. Tanya helped me getting into the field of space law. And then I got into GC, ISU, and, one thing led to another. And I found myself doing a PhD at the University of Luxembourg.
Wow. On that way, so what did impress you most?
This is something that I always think about it. What is that motivated me to do this? What impressed me the most? I think for sure the dream of Elon and the dream of SpaceX was part of it, was a significant part of it. But also I have to say the support that I got from my family and my friends in following my instinct. That really kept me going, and it allowed me not to just do whatever because I had to do something, right? So I think that was inspiring for me, that I had the opportunity to wait and be free to decide, which is, I have to say, I think it's a privilege, especially during these circumstances. So I'm very glad for it. And then the moon kept inspiring me, and it still does every night.
Cool. So, and I love when you say it's always a family. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm from Sicily, what do you expect?
Absolutely. So, as we have a lot of young folks at the beginning of their career in the audience, I see many of our colleagues in the audience are top professionals, so shout out to Jessica and all the others that are joining here. So, but there are also a good number of young fellows that maybe are looking for an advice from somebody from this age group, not from another old white man like me.
Well, Torsten, I think we have a lot to learn from you, but from my own experience, my advice would be really not to give up and not to settle down, on what you think is not really connecting with you. I think we are very lucky to live in a world, especially in the Western part, that allows you to experiment with so many things, to feel and try different paths. And so unless you really feel convinced about something, don't do it. I mean, there is so much that you can do in the world, things that maybe you don't even think about it. So allow yourself the time to process what you're doing. And if you're not happy, change what you're doing, do something about it. I mean, we have the possibility of doing it. And I think it's a waste if we don't do that, if we trap ourselves in a career or in a position or in a geographical location that we don't like, simply because of path or because of habit or because we're afraid to try something new. When I went abroad and I started living alone for the first time, it was scary. I went out of my comfort zone, as people used to say. And I'm not the type of guy that likes to do it. I'll tell you, I really like to be in control of my environment. I like to be, in a safe place. But gosh, if I hadn't done it, I don't know what I've been doing right now, but I wouldn't be as happy as I am, for sure. So my advice is just really, really follow what you have in mind. Try to find something you are connected with, and then just go for it.
We talked about the sunny days and life. What are the no-goes? Could you discover some passes where you say retrospective? Usually that's how we recognize it then. I shouldn't have done that, or is it really something that doesn't help?
It's a good question, and there are so many, of course. So we don't have the whole afternoon because we all make a lot of mistakes. I think one that I used to make in the past is that I was very convinced of everything. I had a very firm opinion on everything, and I think that was because I was very young. It's when you're 20, 21st, you think you got everything right, and that's how it works. And that's not like that. So the no-go would be to fixate yourself on something. It could be an opinion. It could be, again, a professional path. It could be anything. Don't be fixated. Life is change. Life changes continuously. And it's no wrong. There is no shame in changing an opinion, in changing a position. It doesn't mean you were wrong before. It means you're evolving. So my advice, and when I think about what I did wrong, is when I stayed too focused on myself and what I thought was right, instead of having an open mind and let the inputs that were outside come to me. And I have to say, I always was very lucky to get many nice people around me that give me the right inputs. And so whenever I didn't follow them, it was because of me. And so that is something that I try to improve. And my advice would be, don't let your own fixation stand in the way of the good advice you receive and the good people you have around.
Got it. Let's move to the professional level a bit more. It is. In our series with the wonderful Stephen Freeland, we try to demystify space law based on current events, but it's still very abstract. So, what are concrete areas of your own work and that you are involved with, because it's your work?
Thank you, Torsten. And then I would like to take this opportunity to say hi to Stephen and to congratulate him and you for the wonderful program that is Space Law Breakfast. Especially as a lawyer, to see so many people involved and learning about space law and indeed seeing it demystified, it's so much helpful and so important. So thank you both for that a lot. Well, there are many practical things related to being a space lawyer and working with space, because the first reason why we go to space is to improve our life on Earth. Everything we do is connected to that. Now, I work with, it could be said to be abstract subjects like lunar governance or space resources, which are not as directly related to the Earth like space application, right? Somebody working with telecommunication essentially does space law, but it's really connected to the ground. I would like to say that the moon is not immediately connected, but everything we can do there is a learning experience from us on Earth, right? And in concrete terms, for instance, learning how to live on the moon, right? Learning how to develop a settlement there could be so helpful for doing the same on Earth. We have so many desertic areas that are not used because we don't know how to live in certain extreme environments. They are too cold, they are too desert, they are too hot. What we can learn on the moon and in general in space is how do we survive in this environment? And then we can immediately implement this on Earth. And an example of that is given by the UAE, right? They're building a desert city, which they call the Mars City, to learn how to live on Mars and in the same time improve the conditions of their people on Earth. So everything we do related to the moon really always has something, a side application that you can have on Earth.
Got it. Interesting thought. Let's take a few of these really hot legal potatoes, if I can say so as an engineer, and share with us your thoughts. And I know many of these topics are really complex ones with interested in your personal or also your professional vision on that. Or to take an easy one, lunar governance. You work on that, and you're also active on the Open Lunar on that. So what is a model to move forward into our future that you would sign off, support? Find a word for that.
It's a very good question. And of course, it's very difficult to answer it in a few minutes. So that's the lawyer disclaimer, okay? But I'll tell you, after 1 year of working on this with the Eagle team and also in partnership with Open Lunar during the Moon Dialogues, I think the answer is in what Open Lunar started to call polycentricity, and what in SJC and the Eagle team we try to summarize in the idea of a lunar charter. We don't know how we will govern the moon now in details, and it would be very nonsensical to think that we know it right now, because we still haven't learned a lot about the moon. But we know how we want to go forward with the governance of the moon, which is in an inclusive way and in a way that allow us to adapt. So what we need at the moment is to have understanding at the general level about certain things like safety zones, space resources at the principle level, and decide how do we interpret the basic rules of space law in order to then be able to develop, the moon in a sustainable way. This kind of general understanding, we can achieve it today. That's what we need to then kick off. Once we have that, everyone is clear on the very boundaries of the legal rules that apply. Everyone is aware of what the others are doing. Information sharing is another essential element of this governance model. We have to be transparent. The moon is, for me, it's too important to just waste it in political tensions, also because there is really little to be gained in terms of political weight by messing up with the moon. I think actually nothing, but if you want to say maybe there could be something, but it's not comparable to the benefits you can get if you have a cooperative mind. That does not mean that we will not have competition on the moon. That does not mean that there will not be different interests and maybe sometimes even tensions. But that is a completely different mindset when you move from the same starting point, right? So this is my way forward, the idea that we're trying to push with Eagle Team, the idea of agreeing together on a solemn document where we commit to the main things that we can do now, to the understanding that we can develop now, in order then to allow for a sort of solid base to evolve the rules in the future once we know more about the moon. This is what we call adaptive governance.
I will come back on the Eagle Team in a bit, but you just mentioned safety zones. Safety zones does not sound very inclusive by the literal sense. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it needed? Do we start with borders like we have them on Earth?
No, I don't want to start with border for sure. But this is the thing. There is always usually a misunderstanding on what a safety zone is. And if you really think about the term safety zone, it's not exclusionary in nature. And it's just about ensuring safety of operation. The issue with safety zone is that most people understand it. And most of the times it's people that are not familiar with space law and lunar governance. They mostly understand it as an exclusionary zone, as a sort of priority area where you put a fence and nobody can enter. That's not the purpose of a safety zone. That's not how safety zones are usually discussed in space law. At the moment, the UN is working on implementing the concept of safety zone. The Artemis Accords talk about safety zone. We do it in the Eagle Report. The Open Lunar Fellows have done an amazing research on zoning on the moon and what can we do with that. Safety zone is simply an area that you say, okay, I'm operating here up to certain amount of kilometers. I can damage you if you go in, and you can damage me if you don't tell me. So please notify me when you're getting in, so we can coordinate that you can pass through the safety zone without creating damage to me or getting damage yourself. It's really just about coordination. It does not give you the power or the privilege to decide who can enter and who cannot. It does not give you any priority on the resources or on the land. That is regulated by a completely different source of law in the Airspace Treaty. It's just to say, hey, I'm here. I don't want to have interference with you, or at least I'm trying not to. So please talk to me. That is what the safety zone is in nature. And that is how it's legal to have a safety zone. Anything else, anything you hear about safety zone, that it's about priority or it's about excluding others, then that is illegal, plainly and simply illegal. But the safety zone in itself, in the core, and the way it is framed in the Artemis Accord, for instance, it's definitely legal, and it's fairly useful, because otherwise, if everybody will go anywhere on the moon, we will never be able to develop it in a sustainable way.
Information zone?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
you can find a different term, but it's about that.
Yeah.
It's about information sharing and coordination.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, why do we expect that can work if we are not able to register all the objects that are in space in a timely manner, and all of these nitty-gritty details that we see day in and day out? But I would like to take a concrete example which made it to the press over the last weeks, I think. What will happen when two countries, let's call them China and US for this exercise, just to give them some name. I mean, of course I'm red or blue, I don't care. Heading to the same spot on the moon. So what's now? So, I mean, do I have to ask you for permission to go to the moon onto the spot? I think at the moment not yet. So
No.
How can we solve that before it is too late?
It's a very good question, and the article got very popular, and I read it, and I think it makes a valid point. There are some few inaccuracies in the article that I wrote to the editor. For instance, the article says that the US, Russia, and China are not committed to the peaceful usage of the moon because that's in another treaty, which is not correct. All of them are committed to peaceful uses because that's in the Outer Space Treaty, and it's important to say that there is no possibility whatsoever to legally have military activities on the moon. So the moon should be only for peaceful purposes. Having said that, when two countries want to go into the same area, in practice, the rule that applies is freedom on the one hand, right? So you don't have to ask for any permission to go to space if you are a country. Countries are free to explore and use outer space. On the other hand, there is another obligation, which is in Article 9 of the Outer Space Treaty. And you'll forgive me, sometimes I put some names of articles, but maybe people will remember, it's not too many, I hope, but you can stop me if I'm going too lawyerish. Article 9 talks about due regard. It says that, yes, you're free to use outer space, but that freedom is not unlimited. It's not absolute. It doesn't mean you can behave as if you are the only one. Due regard means that if you're going to the south pole of the moon and somebody else wants to come, they cannot go exactly over the same spot where you are already, but you can also not pretend to have them completely out of your sight, right? You cannot pretend to say, hey, I took this area because I'm drilling this, let's say 20 centimeter part, and then you have to stay out for 2 kilometers, right? There is some sort of middle ground that has to be reached in legal terms. And we learned how to do that in the law of the sea. The law of the sea has the same principle. The high seas are free for the exploration and for the use of everybody, but they have to be explored with due regard. Due regard means that if you're going there, you cannot ignore the others. You cannot pretend you're the only one. You have to talk. You have to accommodate. And in legal terms, this is a legal obligation, right? So it's not something that you have to do because you're nice. You do it because it's in a treaty, and you have to perform that in good faith. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you one final thing, which relates to what you said before, right? How are we going to be sustainable and peaceful on the moon if we don't register the objects and we are not behaving exactly properly well in Earth orbit? My answer is because they are different environments. Earth orbit is much more important for strategic terms, for national security. It's a much more controlled environment, something that we can easily turn against people on Earth. It's much more sensitive. The moon is very different. First of all, there is little issues for national security for things that happen on the moon, so there is less incentive to have a military mindset when you talk about lunar exploration. And second, it's a very hostile environment. It's super costly to go to the moon. It's difficult to survive the lunar nights. There are no resources that we can immediately use for building a huge base. You have the ice, you have the regolith, but it takes so much time and effort to do this. And if we start messing with each other, then we will never do anything there, right? It will stop before even we start, right? There is no point of doing this if we're just pretending that we are alone. And it doesn't make any sense from the economic viewpoint, from the political viewpoint. So if you want to go to the moon, if you want to develop the moon, you have to know that you have to do it with others, that you cannot do it alone. And that does not only mean that you have to work with others, right? Partnerships. It means that even your competitors are your allies because you're there in a very difficult environment. Certain things will have to be done together. Otherwise, it's not going to work for anybody. So we will go there, spend a few billion, and then realize, oh, this doesn't work. And then it's a waste opportunity, waste money, waste resources for everybody. I think all the actors that think about and make plans for the moon, they are aware of this. It's just very difficult to say it first, right? To be the first one, sharing the hand. But I think what we're trying to do with organizations like SGC, Open Lunars, to be neutral platforms for countries to get together and have that type of discussion. And I have to say the Gagsla group is also very helpful on that. It's one of the only platforms in which we have US and Chinese colleagues talking with each other and finding a way so that we can all do our things without compromising each other and hopefully maybe with a little bit of support with each other, which in space is the starting point because it's not like Earth and it is different. I want to insist on that. Legally, politically, technically, it's very different. And the moon is even more special.
Got it. So I mean, I'm not sure if you agree, but I think listening to the current developments at GLEX where you have been or so, I mean, I see a future where we have at least 2 international bases on the moon, like we had it before, 2 systems, 1 world, 2 systems, 1 moon, maybe 3 of them, and then our countries can choose. Final round about this critical work, what you do with the Eagle team at SGAC. What is that? Can you elaborate a little bit about that before we go to the questions? And we have a number of questions from the audience. So thanks, guys, for sending them in.
Yeah. So I'll try to be brief. With Eagle, we're trying to solve exactly this type of problems. And we wanted to do it in an original way, providing the perspective of the young generation. You know, there is a lot of talk about sustainable uses of space, sustainability of lunar development. But what sustainability means, to me, it means being able to hand over to the next generation. And so talking about sustainability, designing a sustainable system without taking into account the opinion of the young generation, it's very nonsensical for me. You know, you're not doing it right. You're doing something different than sustainability. So that's why we wanted to provide that opinion, because we also realized that nobody was doing it. We thought that SGAC was a perfect platform to convey that message, because it's the largest network organization of young professionals in the world, more than 16,000 members. And so that's what we did. We gathered together, we talked with the actors, we talked with the political people, we talked with the companies, the scientists, everyone. And then we said, okay, this is how we think we can help the debate, we can help the lunar governance discussion in a way that is innovative. We wanted, first of all, to change the language, to reduce this sometimes political tension that is very misleading, to clean up a little bit the environment and have a fresh start that we can then develop a concrete solution, because this is what we want. And so with the Eagle team, that's what we've done for a year. We've interviewed people, then we develop a report, we present it to the United Nations, and now we're working with the UN and with decision makers at the national level to implement our idea of a lunar charter. And as I mentioned before, a lunar charter is really a document where we all come together and have some sort of boundary conditions for what we want to see legally on the moon. And we're still active. I want to say hi to all the Eagle members. If you want to know more about it, we have a website. Reach out to us. We are looking to welcome new people cooperating with us. So yeah, the Eagle is still flying, and hopefully we'll do it until it reaches the moon.
You don't call him Icarus. That's great. So
no.
Let me pick some questions, and I promise to the others, we will send this question over then to Antonino to write a quick written answer. And send it then with a recap, so in the next day. So stay tuned on that. I would like to pick one from Mark. What are the conditions of space mining on the moon, Astro?
In Luxembourgish law, yeah.
Across Europe. So, but what are the conditions? Yeah.
There are different levels of conditions, right? So if you look at the Luxembourgish law, to do space mining in Luxembourg, you have to be a Luxembourgish company. So you have to incorporate in Luxembourg. You have to be a resident of Luxembourg. You have to respect certain criteria in terms of financial stability, personal honorability, and overall, you have to have a credible company, right? So they will do a sort of assessment that is also done in the financial sector to make sure that you are a credible and reliable actor. This is what the law has so far. And then for the rest, there's going to be implementing regulation that will tell you exactly what are the conditions to get a permit. But most of all, it will be very much similar to what you already see in something like the Artemis Accords. You will have to share the information. If there are scientific results and you're doing it with the government, you have to share the scientific results. If you're a private company, of course, your intellectual property rights will be protected. You have to have an insurance, which is a very important requirement, although a difficult one to actually meet. And then overall, again, you have to be compliant with the international obligations of Luxembourg, so respectful of the Aerospace Treaty. And this is what you see in all legislation so far enacted in terms of space resources. So the US law, the Japanese law, and the UAE law, they all refer to the international environment, and they want to be compliant with that. So Luxembourg is definitely no exception. And actually, it's leading the way forward for that.
Cool. So last one, I will pick Ian's question because I think that's a short answer possible. What do you suggest if you have to recommend just one book for someone to begin in space law?
Well, the answer for me is very easy. It's Introduction to Space Law. It's the book written by the two mentors that I have in space, Professor Tanya Masson-Swan and Professor Maulena Hoffman, that I want to say hi again and thank for them for their guidance. It's a very easy book. Everyone can read it. Everyone can understand it. It's very short. It's very new. It was published, I think, last year or 1.5 years ago. And so there you can find everything you need to start in terms of academic teaching in space law. And then another one, it's the handbook for new space actors, which is published, I think, by the Secure World Foundation. And that is another great book that you can get even for free. I think if you contact Secure World, they will send it to you.
I think downloadable on the website as PDF.
Exactly. Yeah. So both of them.
Great. Thank you very much. As we got the red flags from our production team already. So Stephen, Scott, Lynn, your answers will your questions will be taken care of by us. So give us a few days to come back to you directly. So I'm afraid we have to come to an end for this session. Even so, I would love to continue with you this dialogue. I really enjoyed it. But be assured, and you know that we will following space law or space policy in our upcoming events are as close as possible, and of course in our magazine. Before we finish today, please do not miss the following events. So in 2 days, on the 19th or on Thursday, we have another Space Café Brazil by the wonderful Ian Grossner. And Ian will be joined by Dr. Clesio Nard for our German-speaking audience on the 24th. So next Tuesday, we have 33 minutes with Sabine von der Recke about the plans of the offshore spaceport in the Northern Sea. So I think, especially for the German audience, an interesting one. It will be in German as well. On the 31st, I will continue with an English speaking Space Café. At 4 p.m. I will talk with Ronald van den Breggen about NGSO systems, the imminent success or all a hype after all. So a very interesting one. And if you don't know Ronald van den Breggen, he was the chief commercial officer of Leosat, and he is very, very interesting guy to talk about our constellations. So, and the first week of September, we have 3 more regional space cafes lined up back to back for you. On the 1st of September, I'm very proud of, we have another Space Café Germany by Andreas Schäpers, elections here in Germany. So, and our space will hopefully find its place in the next legislation here in a wider term. On the 2nd of September, we have our next Space Café Scotland by Angela Matthews. And on the 3rd of September, we have the upcoming Space Café Russia by Elena Morozova, another wonderful space lawyer. And that, of course, it's a Russian event. It will be in Russian language. So all events are going to be online on Eventbrite. As always, we would like to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, LinkedIn. Don't forget to sign up to our daily or bi-weekly newsletters. And if you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher today. Your support will help us. Take your credit card and visit our fan shop at shop.spacewatch.global. I'm quite sure, said it before, but it's the truth. We need your support. Thank you all very much for your interest today.
And thanks everybody for attending. It was really great. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you have a fan base, obviously. So
no, I had a lot of fun in terms of I had fun. It was fun.
Yeah, but you also have a fan base. So, but I would like to thank our tech team behind the scenes for doing this great job. Smooth and seamless as always. Even so, we have obviously some issues with the internet connection, but it's not their fault because we are not controlling the internet. I hope you all will stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you not only next week on Thursday for the Portuguese session or for the Brazilian session in Portuguese. In the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. And don't forget,
become a space watcher.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.